Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Our guest today, Matthew Lancor. Matthew, appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming on. And can you tell us, first of all, where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with Kombuchade?
Yes, sir. Matt, thanks for having you. It's good to add another Matt to my Matt squad. I'm calling in from Chicagoland. We manufacture a probiotic beverage called Kombuchade. It's got a sprinkle of kosher Celtic sea salt in there to give you an electrolyte profile. And our products are mainly intended for peak performers and fitness freaks. We kind of saw a space in the kombucha market and the perception of kombucha being a hippie drink. The benefits of gut health and probiotics by far have larger applications than just for hippies. And I found this out through my experiences playing in high levels in the rugby community.
Yeah, it's amazing. And obviously, I feel like gut health and generally like kombucha and products like the other fermented products have been a big topic of conversation on social media and just in general sentiment, it seems like recently. What other kind of benefits do you find for yourself as obviously an elite athlete, but also the folks that you're looking to kind of market to and what you're doing a little bit differently with this brand? What are some of the other benefits you find for people who are performing at the highest level in athletics that way?
It's a great question. And I think how I kind of arrived at it is in my background, I was trained as a material science engineer. So we were trained to look at how certain materials are made. Right? So how they're broken down in each of their own components, how they're manufactured into a whole, and then turned into products after that. When I originally tried kombucha, I had no context for it. I was just playing in a national championship tournament out in Seattle. I was a rookie on the team, and the coach told me to go with the team manager and carry grocery bags and get snacks for the weekend. Typically, we're living on electrolyte goos, caffeine tablets, Cliff bars, bananas, and water. But while I was shopping, I was always looking for something that wasn't just water, but was still healthy for me, kind of switch it up a little bit. And I found these kombucha bottles on an end cap and I start looking at it. And again, through my materials engineering lens, I'm thinking, okay, there's tea. Tea has health benefits. It's fermented. When you ferment tea, you create probiotics, vitamins B, vitamin C, and organic acids, like what's found in apple cider vinegar. So essentially what I saw was something that was going to help me break down the food that I was eating inside of my body, make it more bioavailable for my mitochondria to take those components and turn them into ATP, turn them into energy. And then it was going to help me poop it all out, whatever the byproducts are that were left over. So when you think about it from a high level, it's not just business people or athletes or hippies. It's all mammals. Right? We all eat things. They get fermented inside of our gut. Those fermented juices go to our mitochondria. Our mitochondria then take those fermented byproducts and turn them into ATP. So we have the energy to think and the energy to move.
Yeah, it's amazing. And obviously, with your background, being able to explain it that way is obviously very insightful, probably for anybody who's listening, because I feel like for people like me who don't know anything about, chemistry that way, all I know is when I drink kombucha, I feel a million times better than I did since the last time I had one. So I think it's really interesting with these functional type of foods that are coming around, especially in fermented foods, because I feel like people, once you see the benefits, there's no going back with these types of things. And if you can get somebody who, uses it for a specific purpose and loves the flavor, I know kombucha is a big, people can kind of give or take different types of flavors with kombucha depending on the brands and like what they like, and like the vinegary taste can kind of be off-putting to people. But I think with the benefits, and if you can get the taste profile right for people, it seems like you're probably going to have customers for life. So does that kind of been your experience? People who come across your product, they try it, they love it, and you have a lot of like recurring customers that way. I can imagine that being the case with something like this.
Yeah. So what I found was I liked this kombucha product, but I didn't like the process that was used to make it. And I wanted to innovate on that, right? For an athlete, for somebody who was more active. So what I noticed in the kombuchas that I was drinking back in 2014 is they had added juices or added sugars or flavorings to it post-fermentation. A lot of them were force carbonated, right? So you get this kind of hiccuping, burping sensation, and they were a little more vinegar heavy. So it was a little off-putting, I think, to somebody who's never experienced it or maybe hadn't had fermented foods in the past. And so what we did with Kombuchade was craft something that was way more drinkable. So there's no sugars added post-fermentation. which is what a lot of people are looking for in their kombuchas now. No added sugars. We don't force carbonate. You do get a slight sparkle, right? Like even if I like crack this can open, you'll get that classic and there's a light sparkle to it, but you're not going to burp or hiccup. You could easily chug this can down in the middle of practice or the middle of a game. And then we use a kosher Celtic sea salt. So a really high grade sea salt that's got a nice balance of all the minerals and elements that you're looking for, right? Sodium, potassium, magnesium, they're all in nature's composition, right? So instead of creating our own, let nature do the talking. And what that salt does is it actually balances the organic acids in the kombucha. It's kind of a cooking method, right? You want to balance salt, fat, acid, sweet, and texture. In our product, we've perfected that texture and the balance of that organic acid, that sweet, and that salty into just the perfect kind of crisp beverage that anybody would enjoy pre-workout, during a workout, post-workout, or with a meal.
It's awesome and fascinating. I'm learning so much about, what actually goes into creating, one of my favorite drinks. I never took the time to really learn how it's made or anything. But and then I guess I meant to ask too, when did you actually start with this business? Like when was like your first sale, I suppose, or like the initial launch of these products?
So I got home in August of 2014 after trying my first kombucha. It took me maybe 2 or 3 weeks to find a grocery store in my area that had them. I started buying 3 to 5 bottles a week because I was just enjoying the taste, but also the function. I had never in my entire life as an athlete found something that tasted this good that had this much function. Like I kept doing all my research. I'm like, there's got to be a catch. There's got to be a catch. Turns out there's not. And so I started home brewing by October of 2014. And I probably made my first sale before that end of the year. So I went from August to first sale in a few months, probably 2 or 3 months, just innovating on it. I saw a lot of the kombuchas too were made with just green tea, right? A fermented green tea, and then flavor it, juice it, sweeten it, force carbonate it after. I created a process where we're actually fermenting other functional herbs, right? So in our blend, our base blend, you'll find green tea, oolong tea, as well as rooibos, yerba mate, and ginger. And the 3 functions again of those herbs are digestion, energy, and detoxing, right? So we eat the food, break it down, goes to our cells, then goes to the mitochondria, makes energy, poop out the byproducts. We also sourced out herbs that support those same functions. So it was quick. I mean, I was definitely selling black market kombucha from about the end of 2014.
Prohibition kombucha
until we officially got in a licensed USDA facility in July of 2017.
That's awesome. And then obviously, as you begin to scale, you get in the USDA facility. What was kind of your general go-to-market strategy at that time? Were you kind of more direct-to-consumer focused? Were you looking to get into wholesale quickly? And what actually ended up transpiring in that year?
I can connect the dots now and make it sound like I knew what I was doing, but I was an engineer with no real business development, marketing, or sales experience, no finance experience. All that I knew as an engineer was if I could make a 50% gross margin, I could keep going and I could live on ramen noodles and I could do whatever else on the side that I needed to keep this thing going because I had a 7-day fermentation cycle. So I would do a ton of work 1 day a week, and then I had 6 days to go sell or go work a side job to stay alive. And so really how I started was just direct to consumer with my rugby teammates. And my strategy was I would fill a 1/2-gallon glass growler. So it would hold 64 ounces of product, which was about enough for a week if you were drinking 4 to 5 ounces a day, maybe a little bit more. And they would pay me $20. And if they brought the jug back to me, I would refill it for $15. That was how I originally got the business started. Through that, I found a rugby teammate whose dad ran a prepared meals company, and he was delivering prepared meals to about 30 CrossFit gyms in the Chicagoland area. So I started doing product samplings with them, and then we started wholesaling our kombucha to the prepared meals company, and then he would sell it to his CrossFit customers. After that, we kept getting requests for like a single serve. So people wanted it in like a 12-ounce serving so they could try it as opposed to committing to a whole 1/2 gallon. And that's when we started launching in like coffee shops, individually owned retail locations, gyms and fitness locations, and started kind of preparing ourselves to get ready for some bigger box retail selections.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I suppose, getting into the retail doors naturally leading up to COVID time, what kind of pivots did you have to make at that time? Assuming, you probably had to, focus more on the online sales or maybe ramp up like partnerships like you had with the person you knew who had the meal prep service that was already delivering. So what kind of like pivots did you have to make at that time? And did anything that you made changes around during that time kind of stick around until today?
We had to make tons because everything that we were selling to was pretty much closed overnight. Gyms, coffee shops, prepared meals in gyms, right? Like we essentially had to start from scratch. That was a very tough time to get through. I almost considered letting the business go, but we just had such good feedback from our customers and from people that wanted to still get the products. That's actually one of the reasons we decided to launch in a can, was so we could attack an e-commerce platform. Now, we had several challenges with that. We launched an electrolyte product and a CBD product with just our base blends of kombucha, no flavors. And we launched it on a functional perspective, right? Performance, recovery. People loved both products. However, at the time, CBD was getting flagged by our payment processors and also QuickBooks. So we built a website, had to take that website down, go to another website so we could integrate a third-party payment software. After we built that website and got that payment processor installed, then our accounting software, QuickBooks, said, hey, we see you have CBD on your websites. We're going to pull your services if you don't stop selling it. That's when we cut the CBD SKU, took the electrolyte product and expanded it into 3 different flavors, soon to be a 4th. And coincidentally, during COVID was when we got into regionally the Whole Foods stores in Chicago, as well as some Kroger stores. And that was pretty much what saved the brand, right? Was getting access to about roughly 70 shelves here in Chicago that we were able to start supplying product and get it back into the community.
That's awesome. And it's funny you mentioned you started selling it in 64 ounce like growlers, because I like buying the larger bottles of them, just more cost effective. But also, I drink so much of it that I just like to have more on hand. But one of the annoying things is they are so carbonated that as soon as you open it, the next day it's half as carbonated as it was when you started, and then by the third day it's completely flat. And I actually like carbonation in my kombucha, but for what you're doing it makes sense, because I don't want something super carbonated while I'm working out or something you're drinking on the sideline before you're about to go back in a game or something. So that definitely makes sense for sure. And I'm curious, going through the trials and tribulations of COVID, getting back into retail stores thereafter, what's kind of the breakdown between how much your business you're doing still through that D2C channel that you ramped up during that time, and what you're doing on the wholesale side now?
I would say it's about 10 to 15% online, direct to consumer, and the rest being grocery wholesale, a mix. And then the big thing for us post-COVID has been kombucha on tap. So
cool.
We're putting kombucha on tap in office spaces. We're in the Facebook offices, the LinkedIn offices, a bunch of the co-working spaces here in Chicago. And we're seeing an upswing of customers in these actual companies themselves that are offering kombucha as a perk for their employees. And it's a little bit self-serving, right? They're not drinking too much coffee now. They're not drinking beer or wine or whatever else they're putting on tap in the office space. It's boosting their immune systems. It's helping them in different ways. And so it works for both. Honestly, it's a win-win-win, right? It's a better margin for us. The employee is getting access to something that tastes good and is also good for them. And the employer is getting potentially a more productive, less susceptible to sickness worker.
Such an interesting vertical, and not one I don't think enough CPG brands really think about or as a possibility to, sell their things through. I actually had a gentleman on the podcast a couple of weeks ago and does 100% of his business selling to airport lounges, which is it's just super interesting. I mean, it was just more I think coincidental for him. I don't think he went into a plan like that. He just ended up meeting somebody. He's I want this in every Amex lounge across the country, essentially. It's a really interesting and I think creative revenue stream to think about when you are maybe topping out your e-commerce, topping out your wholesale, you're tired of dealing with, distributors or whatever the case is. I think for anybody listening who's looking to get into a CPG brand, it's a really interesting, can be lucrative vertical. So I appreciate you mentioning that. And I suppose as well, you think about, you kind of have this proprietary process. You have your own facility now, USDA facility. And does anybody approach you with any kind of private labeling, white labeling sort of opportunities that way? Is that something you're open to or had any conversations about, or what's kind of your perspective on that?
It's funny you say that. So as an engineer, I used to work in several co-packing plants. I used to build and sell automated applications. So I worked for a German automation company, and we had a suite of products like position sensors, pressure sensors, temperature sensors, safety sensors, all different kinds of things that you could use to automate manufacturing lines. And I got the idea as I was growing that I would build my capacity larger than my brand could handle so I could do just that. So the one we're running right now, we have a blueberry farmer in Southwest Michigan that has 7 farmers markets that he runs every week from now until basically September or October, weather abiding. And we take his blueberry juice, we put it into one of the blends that we're already currently producing, bottle it, and he sells it as Joe's Blueberry Kombucha. We've also got a famous chef. I can't name him just yet,
Sure, yeah.
but he's got 2 iced tea products that he has gained distribution for 77 Whole Foods stores between Tennessee and Florida. That product will be launching likely in September. So we're going to be co-packing that product for him. And then I had this idea a long time ago when some hospitality groups declined to bring our brand on. They liked the taste. They liked the texture. They didn't like the branding and the packaging. They didn't feel like this sporty kombucha was going to fit into their kind of fine dining or hospitality markets. And I thought, well, why don't I just put it in a wine bottle and just sell it as a non-alcoholic, functional option? And I then had a woman approach me who was like, hey, I have this really good idea. I love your products and I don't drink alcohol anymore. Can you put this in a wine bottle? And can we sell this at like fine dining establishments as like a brunch option? So I'm in discussions with an individual about doing a co-packed version of our product in a wine bottle for her for that same. It's funny how you have these ideas and then somebody comes to you and it's like, hey, could we do this? And it's something I'm open to. I love helping other brands with business development and strategy. And, I've been running into walls for the past 9 years. So now I can help people avoid some of the pitfalls when they're launching their brand. So it's definitely something we're currently engaged in and will be engaging in, I think, moving forward. I've got a larger vision actually too to start supporting some brands in the distribution side of things. I think there's a lot of innovation to be had in the distribution side of things, mainly just customer service and then bringing things into the new world, right? Using more technology, more tracking, more inventory management kinds of things. But if I were to wave a magic wand, 10 years or 20 years from now, I've got a portfolio of super healthy, super functional beverages that we're manufacturing and also distributing through our own channels, through e-commerce channels, and then through selected distribution partners.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love the vision. And I guess, what do you kind of look for when you think about, obviously with your brand being in the stage that it is still in, obviously growing heavily, what do you kind of look for in a, maybe private labeling partner? I know there's definitely some diligence that needs to be had there. I think a lot of people are very skeptical about doing that when they have proprietary processes like they do. What are the kind of the check boxes for you when somebody approaches you with a potentially a private labeling opportunity?
Yeah, mainly because I'm growing my own brand, how much effort is this going to take me, right? Am I creating standard operating procedures for this person? Am I doing formulation for this person? How much funding do they have? Do they have a true understanding of what it takes to launch a beverage brand? Or do they have $10,000 in a wish? I think it's mostly that. And then for me personally, there's qualities in honesty, trust, authenticity, a can-do attitude. I typically look for these core values that we cross-reference with. And then as far as the product goes, it has to be clean label. Right. And I think there's different interpretations of what clean label means to different people. But for me, it's hands down, it's got to be super, super clean. The supply chain, where these products are coming from. I need to know where they're sourced. I need to know how they're made. I need to know the core ingredients that they were produced from. And I want to really do diligence on where all of that stuff is coming from. I exclusively use packaging materials made domestically here in the US. We try to source everything we can as close to our headquarters as possible. So for me, it's I see a lot of, and this term is so overused, and the term greenwashing, but I see a lot of marketing fluff out in the marketplace. And then you go and look at the ingredients panel, or there's no transparency on the sourcing of their materials, or, even just the other day, I saw one that said no dodgy ingredients. And then I go to the ingredients panel and there's natural flavors. It just says natural flavors, right? Tell me what those were made from. What's in that natural flavor? So to me, my vision and my kind of standard is definitely a lot higher than most, which is why I think it's going to take me a little bit longer. to get up the end of that hockey stick, but it's going to be authentic and it's going to help people feel good at the end of the day is really our mission.
I think it's a good and like healthy perspective and taking on those opportunities, because you obviously, you need to grow at your own pace, but also grow like with your partners the way that you want to. I think it's really good advice maybe for anybody, looking to maybe get into that side of their business. If they have a proprietary process like you do and have kind of, ownership and control over their manufacturing, is can dilute the brand if you're not diligent on those things. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I know I mentioned it before we got started, but I do always love to ask this question. I'm curious to hear your answer to it as well. If you could go back to 2014, you first tried kombucha, you got your start, started making it yourself. If you could give yourself any one piece of advice, knowing everything you know now, what do you think that piece of advice would be if you were to start the business again?
Man, off the bat, email marketing. We really didn't I collected emails. Thank God I was like at least collecting them. So we've got about 7,000 or 8,000 on our list now, but that could easily be 50,000 people by now. And the thing that I got lost in was this, like, I need to get to Whole Foods. I need to get to that grocery shelf. But what you don't realize is you don't ever get to meet the customer, and you can lose that shelf space even if you're doing everything right. So the big one for me is like building that community and getting access to being able to talk to your customers, whether that's through social media, whether that's through email, whatever way you're building that community. Like, meet that customer, talk to them, get their contact information, get their address, get their credit card, get all that stuff lined up so that you can just make a sale directly to that person. And it's not to say ignore wholesale retail opportunities or ignore the shelf space if you can get it. But, recently Amazon acquired Whole Foods in the last few years, and their local foraging program is now gone. So here in Chicagoland, there's at least, my best estimate, between 50 and 100 local brands that have been taken off the shelves at all the Chicagoland stores at no fault of their own. We've been encouraged to reapply for planogram space from the global planogramming, but that's 20% of our revenue that was just like, hey, sorry, we'll write this email that says we're sorry to hear it. But like, if I had access to all the emails of the customers who were purchasing our products at Whole Foods, I could send them an email and say, hey, in response to this, we've launched a home delivery program here in Chicago. If you still want to get our products, you can order it on our website and we'll deliver it to your doorstep. Or if you're out of state, I can ship you a 12-pack or a 24-pack on a recurring basis, which is the pivot that we're doing now in response to that. So definitely email marketing, definitely building that community of customers. I also think what's interesting is the naivety can actually be a benefit. I think sometimes when you're younger and dumber, or just younger and less aware of all of the things that could happen or might happen, you're able to put these horse blinders on and just focus on these short-term goals that end up building traction towards the future. So in one respect, I would tell myself to do more email marketing. In another respect, it'd be like, Matt, why are you launching 7 SKUs in glass bottles and trying to compete with some of the most well-capitalized companies on the planet? Like, I would have a strong conversation with myself. There are likely other business ventures that could be more lucrative. But at the end of the day, like, that wasn't my goal. Right? Like, I was making over 6 figures in my engineering role, loving what I was doing, really engaged in it. I felt like I was learning a lot. I was building a good network, and I stumbled into seeing processed food being made, right? Like behind the curtains, and I got to witness it, and I didn't want to be a part of it anymore, right? I was connecting the problems with gut health, metabolic health, cancer rates, all this stuff that we're experiencing as a nation in the United States. And I realized that at the root of it, most of it was connected to our supply chains, how the food is grown. We spray pesticides all over the plants, which affects the plants. It leaves residue on the plants. It affects the soil health. So now, because the soil health sucks, we have to add petroleum inputs onto it. So we spray petroleum derived fertilizers and pesticides. That cycle can only last so long. There's a natural cycle of microbes in the soil that will rebuild itself and rebuild those nutrients if we do it in the right way. And because we're doing that, we're making processed foods with these plants that are depleted of nutrients and left with arguably cancer-causing pesticides on them that disrupt the microbiome, right? Glyphosate is a major one that's been shown to actually disrupt the microbiome in the gut health in mammals. And I became super cynical, right? Like, I was really becoming upset with the state of things. And, thank God I'm here in the United States. And what do I have the ability to do? That's an entrepreneur's dream, right? Is to look at a problem and think, how can I participate in the solution of this? I don't don't need to be the solution, but how can I get kids at soccer games drinking this instead of corn syrup and coloring? How can I get a generation of athletes with a strong gut microbiome? How can I help the obesity rate in kids that's now like 40% or something crazy? I'm not going to solve that, but can I make a difference in like 100,000 kids' lives or 1 million people's lives through the use of a product that's clean label and supporting rebuilding their gut health? So a long-winded answer, but I think, again, it'd be just building a community and then letting myself know like it's okay to do something, even if you're not sure if you're going to succeed. This might be really, really hard, but in the process of doing something really, really hard, you're going to become somebody else. And so my thought the whole time was like, if Kombuchade fails, at least I stood up for my quality and I stood up for my character and I built something of myself other than what I would have been. And at the end of the day, I'm building my skill sets at the same time. That was also something I heavily invested in, was like, how do I transform from an operations engineer into a CEO? It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 2 to 3 years. And it's not something you can fake it till you make it, because you're playing with other people's money after you start taking outside capital. Even if you're playing with your own money, you need to understand the costs that are involved with that. So I don't know. It's been a remarkable journey thus far. It'll be 9 years this June. We're still plugging at it. We're now profitable the year to date. We have achieved what a lot of brands would only dream of achieving. But even now, I feel like we're kind of just getting started.
That's awesome, man. I love that. I think that's all really good advice for anybody listening. I mean, obviously a lot of commonality and, answers like that, which is, you mentioned a lot, but it's all really good points and all things I hear, time and time again when I ask that question. And it might be anecdotal evidence of 1 or 2 people say it, but by the 30th time when you hear kind of the same advice from people who started a CPG brand, it's not so anecdotal anymore. So I appreciate you kind of adding to that part of the conversation. And, for anybody listening who might be looking to get started in their own capital venture, all the things you mentioned are like some of the most recurring and most important things. So I appreciate that. And yeah, Matthew, I just want to say thank you again for coming on, man. I really appreciate your wisdom in this space, and I love your why and your passion for what you're doing. So I just want to wish you the best of luck and continued success in everything you're doing. I really appreciate you being here again. And I really look forward to staying in touch with you as well.
Heck yeah, Matt. Matt squad out, baby.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Matthew. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, Matt. Bye.